Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin.
The key turned easier than expected. Rowan Elridge pushed open the front door of her Greensboro home, her laptop bag sliding down her shoulder as she stepped inside. The presentation had gone better than planned. 2 days ahead of schedule meant 2 extra days with June before school started again. The house felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. "June!" Rowan called out, setting her bag by the door. "I'm home early." No answer. No sound of running feet or excited squeals. Just the hum of the refrigerator and something else, a chemical smell that made her nose wrinkle. Rowan walked through the living room, noting the couch cushions set perfectly straight, the coffee table clear of June's usual collection of books and art supplies. Everything looked staged, like a model home waiting for buyers. The chemical smell grew stronger as she approached the kitchen. Bleach, strong enough to burn her throat. She found June on her hands and knees, scrubbing the already spotless kitchen floor with yellow rubber gloves that came up past her elbows. The 9-year-old's dark hair hung in her face as she worked a scrub brush in tight circles. Her small frame hunched over the tiles. "June!" Rowan's voice came out sharper than she intended. June's head snapped up, her brown eyes wide with surprise and something else fear. The scrub brush clattered to the floor. "Mom, you're home." June scrambled to her feet, the oversized gloves making her movements clumsy. "I thought you weren't coming back until Thursday." Rowan knelt down, pulling the gloves off June's hands. The child's palms were red and raw from the bleach. "What are you doing, sweetheart? Where are Grandma and Grandpa Elridge?" June's eyes darted away. "They went to Carowinds with Kenzie. I had to stay home." "Stayed home? By yourself?" Rowan kept her voice level, but ice formed in her chest. "For how long?" "Since this morning," they said. June's voice dropped to a whisper. "They said I wasn't really part of the family and had to earn my place. Grandma Miriam left me a list of things to clean." The ice in Rowan's chest spread outward, numbing her fingers, sharpening her focus. She stood slowly, her movements deliberate. "Where's this list?" June pointed to the counter, where a piece of paper sat folded next to the bleach bottle. Rowan picked it up, recognizing Miriam's careful handwriting immediately. "Kitchen floor scrub with bleach solution, bathroom tiles scrub grout, vacuum living room dust all surfaces, clean windows inside and out the bottom, in different ink. June must complete all tasks before our return." Emmy Rowan folded the paper carefully and slipped it into her pocket. "June, go wash your hands with soap. Get all that bleach off." "Am I in trouble?" "No, baby, you're not in trouble." While June washed her hands, Rowan pulled out her phone and opened the doorbell camera app. She scrolled back through the day's footage, watching her in-laws leave at 8:30 that morning with Kenzie, a blonde girl about June's age, skipping between them toward their silver sedan. N.O. return. June had been alone for over 6 hours. Rowan walked through the house methodically, photographing everything. The cleaning supplies left out. The list. June's red hands. She took screenshots of the doorbell footage, noting timestamps. Then she opened her text messages and scrolled to her conversation with Gretchen, called her sister. "Gretchen, Mom and Dad really want June for the weekend. Just this once. Rowan, I told you, supervised visits only. I'll be back Thursday. Gretchen, come on, Ro." "Their family." "Rowan, the answer is no." "Gretchen, too late. They already picked her up." Rowan stared at that last message, sent yesterday at 7 p.m. They had taken June anyway, against her explicit refusal. "Mom." June appeared in the doorway, hands pink but clean. "Are you mad at me?" Rowan knelt down and pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo beneath the bleach fumes. "I'm not mad at you. I'm proud of you for being so responsible. But you should never have been left alone. Kenzie gets to do fun things because she's really their granddaughter," June said into Rowan's shoulder. I'm just adopted. The words hit Rowan like a physical blow, but she kept her voice steady. You are my daughter, Daddy's daughter. That makes you just as much an Elridge as anyone else. Then why don't they love me? Rowan pulled back to look June in the eyes. Because some people are too small inside to love the way they should. That's their problem, not yours. June nodded, but doubt still clouded her expression. Go pack your pajamas and some clothes, Rowan said. We're staying at a hotel tonight. Order room service, maybe watch a movie. Really? June's face lit up for the first time since Rowan had come home. Really? Go on. As June's footsteps pounded up the stairs, Rowan pulled out her phone again. Not to call the Elridges. Not to call Gretchen. Not yet. Instead, she dialed Allison Rake. Rowan? I thought you were in Charlotte until Thursday. I need to see you. Tonight. Can you meet me at that coffee shop on Elm Street? Of course. What's wrong? Rowan looked around the spotless kitchen, evidence of her daughter's forced labor. They left my child alone. This isn't family. This is warfare. The coffee shop buzzed with evening customers, but Rowan had chosen a corner table away from the crowd. June sat at the next table over with a hot chocolate and a coloring book, close enough for supervision, but far enough away not to overhear. Allison Rake slid into the seat across from Rowan, her expression already grim. At 42, the school psychologist had known Rowan since college, had been maid of honor at her wedding to Calder, and had held her hand through the funeral 3 years ago. Tell me, Allison said simply. Rowan laid out the evidence methodically, the photos on her phone, the text messages, the cleaning list now in a plastic baggie. She spoke in quiet, measured tones, watching Allison's face grow harder with each detail. They left her alone for 6 hours, Allison said when Rowan finished, with industrial-strength bleach. I know. This isn't the first time they've excluded her. No. Rowan sipped her coffee, remembering. Christmas last year, they forgot to get June a stocking. Easter, they hid eggs for all the other kids, but told June she was too old. Calder's birthday, they brought flowers to his grave, but didn't invite us. Because she's adopted. Because she's not blood. The words tasted bitter. Calder's parents never accepted the adoption. They tolerated it while he was alive, but barely. Allison leaned forward. What did the court order say about visitation? Supervised visits only. I was supposed to be present, or they were supposed to be at my house. Rowan's jaw tightened. They manipulated Gretchen into taking custody while I was out of town. Made it seem like I'd agreed. That's a violation. I know. What are you going to do? Rowan pulled out her phone and scrolled to a contact. Tanner Cobb. Remember him? Allison introduced us at that school fundraiser last spring. The litigation attorney. Rowan, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Rowan's voice cut through the coffee shop noise. They hurt my daughter. They abandoned my daughter. They treated her like a servant while they took their real granddaughter to an amusement park. She stood up, gathering her things. I don't want them punished. I want them erased. Allison caught her arm. Think about this. These are still June's grandparents. Legally, technically. No. Rowan's voice was ice. Grandparents don't leave children alone with bleach. Grandparents don't make children scrub floors to earn their place in the family. They stopped being grandparents the moment they decided June wasn't worthy of their love. She looked over at June, who was carefully coloring inside the lines of a butterfly. I won't let anyone treat her as less than. Not anymore. That night in their hotel room, after June had fallen asleep in the big bed with the television still glowing, Rowan sat by the window with her laptop open. Tanner Cobb had answered her call immediately and agreed to meet tomorrow morning. Now she was documenting everything. Every slight, every exclusion, every moment when the Elridges had made it clear that June didn't truly belong. She typed steadily, her fingers finding a rhythm on the keyboard that felt like drum beats before a battle. The list grew longer than she'd expected. 3 years of accumulated wounds, each one seemingly small by itself, but devastating in their collective weight. Death by 1,000 cuts, except June was still alive to feel every one. Rowan saved the document and closed the laptop. Tomorrow, she would begin to cut back. Tanner Cobb's office sat in a converted Victorian house downtown, all hardwood floors and tall windows that let in the morning light. Rowan arrived 15 minutes early with a manila folder thick with documentation. Tanner looked younger than his 38 years, with sandy hair and wire-rimmed glasses that made him seem more like a college professor than a lawyer who specialized in family disputes. But Allison had assured her that his mild appearance was deceiving. Mrs. Elridge. He shook her hand firmly. Allison told me you might need some legal guidance. I need them gone, Rowan said without preamble, setting the folder on his desk. Permanently. Tanner raised an eyebrow, but opened the folder. He read through everything silently, the photos, the text messages, the documented history of exclusion, the court order they'd violated. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair. This is comprehensive, he said, and damning. The violation of the custody agreement alone is grounds for terminating their visitation rights. What about criminal charges? Child endangerment is a possibility. Leaving a 9-year-old alone for 6 hours with dangerous chemicals. He tapped his pen against the desk. But family court judges sometimes hesitate to separate children from grandparents unless there's clear and immediate danger. Rowan's expression didn't change. Then we make the danger clear. Tanner studied her for a long moment. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish? I want a cease and desist order. I want their visitation rights terminated with prejudice. I want it on record that they are unfit to be around my daughter. She paused. And I want everyone to know what they did. The legal part I can handle. The court of public opinion is trickier. Leave that to me. They spent the next hour crafting a cease and desist letter that was cold, precise, and backed by extensive documentation. Tanner would file it that afternoon, with copies sent to every member of the Elridge family who had turned a blind eye to the pattern of exclusion. When Rowan left his office, she felt lighter than she had in 3 years. Not because the weight was gone, but because she finally had a plan to shift it onto the people who deserved to carry it. That afternoon, while June was at a friend's house, Rowan sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open and began to type. Subject: Documentation of child endangerment, August 15th, 2024 to Miriam Elridge, Silas Elridge, Gretchen Elridge, Michael Elridge, Patricia Elridge, David Elridge, please find attached legal documentation regarding the care of my daughter, June Elridge, during her unauthorized custody period on August 15th, 2024, that this email serves as formal notification that all contact with my daughter has been terminated immediately. Any attempt to contact June directly or through third parties will be considered harassment and will be reported to law enforcement. The attached evidence speaks for itself. Rowan Elridge. She attached the photos, the text messages, the doorbell footage, and the cease and desist letter. Then she hit send. Her phone started ringing within minutes. Miriam first, her voice thick with tears. Rowan, please, you don't understand. We were trying to teach her responsibility. We never meant. Rowan let the voicemail record the full 2-minute sob story and saved it. Silas didn't call at all. Gretchen's voicemail was sharp with anger. You've always been dramatic, Rowan. Making mountains out of molehills. Blood matters. That girl isn't really an Elridge, and deep down you know it. Rowan saved that one too. Then she blocked all their numbers. The next morning, Allison called with news. I filed a mandated report, she said without preamble. You what? As a school psychologist, I'm required to report suspected child endangerment. The documentation you showed me yesterday meets the criteria. Allison's voice was steady but grim. Child Services will investigate. When? They're already on their way to interview Silas and Miriam. Rowan smiled for the first time in days. Good. The investigator, a tired-looking woman named Beth Morrison, called Rowan that evening. "I've completed my initial interviews," Morrison said. Mr. and Mrs. Elridge claimed they left detailed instructions and that the child was only alone for a short time. "Do you have their statement in writing?" "I do." "Good, because I have doorbell footage showing they left at 8:30 in the morning and didn't return until after I arrived home at 3:15. A pause. "May I have a copy of that footage?" "Already emailed to your office." Another pause, longer this time. "Mrs. Elridge, I'll be recommending that this case remain open pending further investigation. The grandparents have been advised that any unsupervised contact with the child should cease immediately. What happens if they violate that advice?" Then we move from recommendations to court orders. Rowan hung up feeling grimly satisfied. The net was tightening point 3 days after sending the email. Rowan received official confirmation that Tanner had filed the cease and desist order. The Elridges had 72 hours to respond through their own attorney or face default judgment. They chose to respond. They hired Preston Matthews, Tanner told her over the phone. "Big family law firm in High Point. Expensive." What does that mean? It means they're taking this seriously. It also means they have money to burn on a fight. Let them burn it. Rowan had spent the morning researching Preston Matthews online. The firm specialized in defending wealthy families in custody disputes, often portraying concerned grandparents as victims of vindictive daughters-in-law. Their website featured testimonials from reunited families and photographs of silver-haired couples embracing grandchildren. That IT made her sick, but it also gave her an idea. That afternoon, she opened her laptop and navigated to Triangle Moms, a popular parenting blog that covered the Raleigh-Durham-Chapel Hill area. The site featured a section called Community Stories where parents shared experiences and sought advice. Rowan created an anonymous account and began to type. Anonymous mom in Greensboro posted, "August 19th, 2024, I need advice from other parents. I came home from a work trip 2 days early and found my 9-year-old daughter alone, scrubbing the kitchen floor with industrial bleach. She'd been alone for over 6 hours. The people who left her are my late husband's parents. They took their biological granddaughter to an amusement park, but made my adopted daughter stay home to clean. They left her a written list of chores and told her she had to earn her place in the family, and my daughter is legally their granddaughter. My husband adopted her when she was 4, 3 years before he died. But they've never accepted her because she's not blood. I've cut off all contact, but they're fighting it through lawyers. Part of me wonders if I'm overreacting. The other part of me knows that number 9-year-old should be left alone with chemicals and told she's not really family. Has anyone else dealt with grandparents who play favorites? How do you protect your kids from family members who don't really want them?" She posted it and closed the laptop. Be white evening. The post had 37 comments. By the next morning, it was up to 96. By the end of the week, it had been shared over 200 times across social media platforms. The comments ranged from supportive to outraged. "OMG, this is child abuse. Call CPS immediately. Blood doesn't make family. Love makes family. Those people are toxic. I know exactly who this is about. The Elridges have been pulling this crap for years. My mother-in-law did the same thing to my stepson. Some people are just cruel. This happened in Greensboro. My kids go to school with an Elridge granddaughter. Is this about them?" But it was comment number 43 that made Rowan sit up straight. Anonymous teacher. "I work in the school system here. I've seen Silas Elridge's behavior on the school board firsthand. He absolutely plays favorites and has used his position to benefit certain families while blocking resources for others. This story doesn't surprise me at all." And comment 67, former neighbor, lived next to the Elridges for 5 years. They treated their neighbors' kids like dirt because they weren't white. Silas once called the HOA on a family for having too many cars, but never said anything about the white family with twice as many vehicles. They have a pattern. The story was taking on a life of its own, spreading beyond the original parenting blog to local Facebook groups, neighborhood forums, and parent text chains. By Thursday, someone had connected enough dots to name the Elridges directly that Rowan's phone rang that evening. An unknown number. Mrs. Elridge? This is Janet Webb from WXII News. I'm calling about a story that's been circulating online regarding your former in-laws and your daughter. Rowan hung up without saying a word. But the call made her realize how far the story had spread, and how much power public opinion could wield in a small community like Greensboro. The news story aired 3 days later, carefully worded to avoid libel, but damning in its implications. Janet Webb had done her homework, interviewing former neighbors, school officials, and parents who'd had run-ins with Silas Elridge during his tenure on the school board. Questions of favoritism and inappropriate conduct, Webb said into the camera, standing in front of Greensboro's main library. Multiple sources tell WXI that Silas Elridge has a history of using his position to benefit certain families while excluding others. The story mentioned the anonymous blog post that had sparked the investigation, though it didn't name Rowan or June directly. It didn't need to. Anyone who knew the family could connect the dots. More importantly, it gave voice to other people who'd been hurt by the Elridges over the years. He blocked funding for the after-school program because it served mostly minority kids, said Maria Santos, a former PTA president. But he pushed through money for new uniforms for the select soccer team that his grandson played on. They complained about every family event that didn't center around their preferences, added Tom Bradley, a neighbor. Christmas decorations, Halloween parties, even birthday celebrations. If it wasn't their way, they found reasons why it was inappropriate. The story painted a picture of a family that had used their wealth and position to control their community while excluding anyone who didn't meet their standards. June wasn't their first victim. She was just the most recent. Rowan watched the story from her hotel room with June beside her, both of them eating takeout Chinese food and pretending it was a fun adventure rather than hiding from the media attention. Why are people talking about Grandma and Grandpa Elridge on TV? June asked around a mouthful of lo mein. Because sometimes when people do wrong things, other people find out about it. Are they in trouble? Yes, baby. They're in trouble. June nodded thoughtfully. Good. What they did was mean. Yes, it was. Will I have to see them again? No. You never have to see them again if you don't want to. June smiled and went back to her noodles, satisfied with this answer in the way that only children could be. For her, the solution was simple. People should face consequences, and then you shouldn't have to deal with them anymore. If only the adult world worked so cleanly. But maybe, Rowan thought as she watched her daughter eat, it could work that way sometimes. Maybe the trick was having enough evidence and enough determination to make the consequences stick. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is getting out of hand. We need to talk. Gretchen Rowan deleted it without responding. The emergency motion for grandparent visitation arrived on a Friday morning, hand-delivered by a process server who apologized profusely for interrupting Rowan's breakfast. Emergency motion. Tanner's voice was sharp when she called him. There's no emergency. They're just trying to get in front of the narrative. What does this mean? It means Miriam is claiming that losing contact with June constitutes immediate harm to the child's well-being. She's asking for court-ordered, supervised visitation pending a full hearing. Rowan felt ice form in her chest again, the same cold fury that had filled her when she'd found June scrubbing the floor. Over my dead body. Rowan. I mean it, Tanner. They will not get access to my daughter. Not now, not ever. I understand your feelings, but we need to be strategic here. Judges don't like it when families are completely cut off from children, especially grandparents. Even grandparents who abandon children with bleach. That's our strongest argument, along with the violation of the existing custody order. Papers rustled on his end of the phone. "We have a hearing scheduled for next Wednesday. Can you be there?" "I'll be there." "Good. And Rowan? Don't talk to any reporters between now and then. Let the evidence speak for itself." The weekend passed slowly. Rowan and June stayed in their hotel, ordering room service and watching movies, pretending they were on vacation rather than hiding from both media attention and legal proceedings. June seemed to sense her mother's tension despite Rowan's efforts to stay calm. "Mom," June said on Sunday night as they were getting ready for bed, "are you scared?" Rowan considered lying, then decided June deserved honesty. "A little, but not scared that they'll hurt you again. Scared that the judge won't understand how wrong what they did was." "Will you tell the judge about the bleach?" "Yes." "And about how they said I wasn't really family?" "Yes." June nodded gravely. "Then the judge will understand. Adults are supposed to protect kids, not hurt them." Out of the mouths of babes, Rowan thought. If only all adults understood what her 9-year-old grasped instinctively. Monday morning brought another surprise, a call from Allison. "The Child Services investigation is complete," she said. "Beth Morrison called me this morning." And substantiated neglect. They're recommending that Silas and Miriam Elridge be placed on the state registry for child endangerment. The state registry. That meant background checks would forever show their names associated with child endangerment. They could never work with children again, never volunteer at schools or churches, never be trusted with the care of minors. "That should help our case," Rowan said. "It should, but Rowan, there's something else. Morrison said the Elridges are claiming you coached June to lie about what happened." The ice in Rowan's chest spread outward. "They're calling my daughter a liar?" "Apparently. Their attorney is arguing that you manipulated June's statement to make them look bad." "I have it on video. June's original statement recorded before I told her anything about what I was planning." "Good. Bring that to court." Wednesday morning arrived gray and cold, summer giving way to the first hints of fall. Rowan dressed carefully in a navy suit that made her look professional but not flashy, pulled her dark hair back in a simple bun, and drove to the courthouse with her evidence folder on the passenger seat. Tanner met her in the hallway outside the courtroom, his expression grim. "They have character witnesses," he said without preamble. 5 people willing to testify that Silas and Miriam are loving grandparents who would never harm a child. "Who?" "Church members, mostly. A few family friends." He adjusted his glasses. "Preston Matthews is good at this. He's going to paint them as grieving grandparents who made a small mistake and are being punished excessively by a vindictive mother." "What about our evidence?" "It's solid, but you need to be prepared for them to attack your credibility. They're going to claim you've been alienating June from them since Calder died." "Have I?" Tanner looked at her steadily. "Have you?" "I've been protecting her from people who treated her as less than human." "Then that's what we'll argue." The courtroom was smaller than Rowan had expected, with dark wood paneling and fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly sick. Miriam and Silas sat at the defendant's table with Preston Matthews, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who looked exactly like Central Casting's idea of a lawyer. Miriam wore black, as if she were attending another funeral. Silas stared straight ahead, his jaws set in a hard line that Rowan recognized from family dinners when Calder was alive. Judge Patricia Romano called the court to order. She was younger than Rowan had expected, maybe mid-40s, with short brown hair and tired eyes that suggested she'd seen too many family disputes. "This is an emergency motion for temporary grandparent visitation," she began. "Mr. Matthews, you have 30 minutes to present your case." Preston Matthews stood with practiced grace. "Your Honor, my clients are loving grandparents who are being denied access to their granddaughter by a mother who has allowed grief to cloud her judgment. Silas and Miriam Elridge lost their son 3 years ago. Their granddaughter June is their only remaining connection to their beloved child. He painted a picture of devoted grandparents who had helped raise June from infancy, who had provided financial support and emotional stability during difficult times. He acknowledged that they had made an error in judgment by leaving June alone briefly, but characterized it as the kind of minor mistake that any caregiver might make. Mrs. Elridge has used this single incident to completely sever the relationship between June and her grandparents, Matthews continued. She has refused all contact, ignored requests for mediation, and has gone so far as to publicize private family matters in an attempt to humiliate and punish my clients. He called Miriam to the stand first. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue as she spoke about loving June, as if she were my own flesh and blood, about teaching her to bake cookies and helping with homework, about the miscommunication that led to June being left alone for what she claimed was only an hour or two. I would never intentionally harm June, Miriam said, her voice breaking. She's my granddaughter. I love her. Silas was more composed but equally convincing in his portrayal of himself as a grandfather who just wanted to remain part of his granddaughter's life. We made a mistake, he admitted, but families should work through mistakes together, not use them as weapons. The character witnesses were effective, a parade of church members and family friends who testified to the Elridge's character, their love for June, their devastation at being cut off from their granddaughter. By the time Matthews finished his presentation, Rowan could see doubt creeping into Judge Romano's expression. The story he'd told was compelling, grieving grandparents making a minor error in judgment, being punished by an unreasonable daughter-in-law who was using their granddaughter as a weapon. It was also completely false. Tanner stood for the defense. Your Honor, this case is not about a minor error in judgment. This case is about a pattern of emotional abuse, endangerment, and deliberate exclusion that culminated in a 9-year-old child being abandoned for over 6 hours with dangerous chemicals. He played the doorbell footage, showing the Elridges leaving at 8:30 a.m. and not returning. He presented the text messages showing Rowan's explicit refusal to allow unsupervised visitation. He showed photographs of June's chemical-burned hands and the chore list written in Miriam's handwriting. The defendants violated a court order, Tanner continued. They ignored explicit instructions from the child's mother. They left a 9-year-old alone with industrial bleach for 6 hours while they took their biological granddaughter to an amusement park. He called Beth Morrison from Child Services, who testified about her investigation and the substantiated finding of neglect. He played June's original statement on video, recorded before she knew about any legal proceedings. They said, I wasn't part of the family and had to earn my place. Kenzie got to go to the amusement park with them because she's really their granddaughter. The child's words, delivered in her clear 9-year-old voice, hung in the courtroom like an accusation. Finally, Tanner called Rowan to the stand. Mrs. Elridge, he said gently, please tell the court about your daughter's relationship with the defendants. Rowan spoke carefully, methodically, about 3 years of accumulated slights, the forgotten stocking at Christmas, the exclusion from Easter egg hunts, the birthday parties where June was made to feel like an outsider, the constant reminders that she wasn't real family. Did you ever attempt to address these issues with the defendants? Multiple times. They would apologize and promise to do better, then repeat the same behavior. Why did you allow any visitation at all? Because I thought June deserved to have grandparents. I thought they might change. Rowan's voice hardened. I was wrong. Preston Matthews cross-examined her aggressively, trying to paint her as a vindictive woman using her daughter to punish her in-laws. But Rowan's evidence was too comprehensive, her documentation too thorough. When it was over, Judge Romano called a brief recess to review the evidence. Rowan sat in the hallway with Tanner, watching Miriam cry into Silas's shoulder, while Preston Matthews spoke to them in low, urgent tones. How do you think it went? Rowan asked. Better than I expected. The video evidence was damning, and June's statement was powerful. He adjusted his glasses. But you never know with family court judges. They want to keep families together when possible. Even toxic families. Sometimes, especially toxic families. The assumption is that family relationships can be repaired with time and effort. Judge Romano called them back after 20 minutes. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today, she began, her expression grave. This court finds that the defendants violated the existing custody order by taking the minor child without explicit permission from her mother. The court also finds that leaving a 9-year-old child unsupervised for 6 hours with access to dangerous chemicals constitutes endangerment. Rowan felt her heart begin to race. However, the judge continued, this court also recognizes the importance of grandparent relationships in a child's life. Therefore, I am ordering supervised visitation. No. Rowan stood up before she could stop herself. Your Honor, I'm sorry, but no. Mrs. Elridge, please be seated. They called my daughter a liar, Rowan said, her voice carrying across the courtroom. They've spent 3 years making her feel unwanted and unloved. They abandoned her with bleach and told her she had to earn her place in the family. You cannot ask me to subject her to more of that. Mrs. Elridge. She's 9 years old. She's been through enough. Judge Romano's expression hardened. Mrs. Elridge, if you do not seat yourself immediately, I will hold you in contempt of court. Tanner tugged on Rowan's sleeve, and she sat down reluctantly. As I was saying, Judge Romano continued, I am ordering supervised visitation to begin. She paused, looking down at her papers again. When she looked up, her expression had changed. Actually, upon further reflection, I need to address Mr. Matthews' argument that this is simply a family dispute that should be resolved through mediation. She shuffled through the evidence packets. The photographic evidence shows chemical burns on a child's hands. The video evidence shows abandonment for over 6 hours. The Child Services investigation resulted in substantiated neglect. She looked directly at Miriam and Silas. These are not the actions of loving grandparents who made a simple mistake. These are the actions of adults who prioritized their biological granddaughter over their adopted granddaughter to such an extreme degree that they endangered the child. Rowan held her breath. The emergency motion for grandparent visitation is denied. Furthermore, I am denying it with prejudice, meaning it cannot be refiled except under extraordinary circumstances. Judge Romano's voice was firm. The defendants are warned that any attempt to contact the minor child directly or through third parties will be considered custodial interference and will result in criminal charges. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Rowan felt Tanner's hand on her shoulder, heard him saying something about a complete victory, but his voice seemed to come from far away. She stared at the defendant's table, where Miriam was sobbing openly, and Silas sat frozen in his chair. IT was over. They could never hurt June again, as she gathered her things and prepared to leave. Rowan caught Silas's eye across the courtroom. For a moment, she saw something there that might have been regret or recognition of what they'd lost. Then he looked away, and the moment was gone. Outside the courthouse, Tanner shook her hand with genuine warmth. That was as complete a victory as you could have asked for, he said. Judge Romano doesn't deny grandparent visitation lightly. Your evidence made the difference. What happens now? Now you go home and start rebuilding your life without them in it. Rowan nodded, feeling strangely empty after the adrenaline of victory. Thank you. You did the hard work. I just presented it. As she drove home to pick up June from Allison's house, Rowan felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. For 3 years, she'd been fighting a defensive battle, protecting June from people who were supposed to love her. Now the battle was over. They'd won. But even as relief flooded through her, Rowan couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Elridges had lost in court, but people like them didn't disappear quietly. They regrouped. They found new ways to hurt the people who'd crossed them. She would be ready for whatever came next. 3 weeks after the court victory, Rowan was finally beginning to feel normal again. June had settled back into school with remarkable resilience, making new friends and throwing herself into art projects with the enthusiasm that only 9-year-olds possessed. The media attention had died down, and life was returning to a peaceful routine. Then the envelope arrived at came by certified mail on a Thursday afternoon, thick and official-looking with the logo of Carolina Workers' Union Pension Fund in the corner. Rowan signed for it absently, assuming it was routine paperwork related to Calder's death benefits. Inside, she found a letter dated 3 days earlier. Dear Mrs. Elridge, we are writing to inform you of a discrepancy that has come to our attention regarding the pension benefits for your late husband, Calder James Elridge, deceased August 2021. Our records show that in March 2024, we received updated beneficiary information from Mr. Elridge's pension account, redirecting all remaining benefits to the Miriam Elridge Family Trust. This change was submitted electronically using Mr. Elridge's login credentials and appeared to include his digital signature. However, upon routine audit, we have discovered that this change was submitted 6 months after Mr. Elridge's death. We are required by federal law to report this discrepancy and are immediately freezing all pension assets pending investigation. Please contact our fraud department at your earliest convenience. Sincerely, Douglas Chin Senior Compliance. Officer Owen read the letter 3 times before the words fully sank in. Someone had accessed Calder's pension account 6 months ago, 2.5 years after his death, and redirected his benefits to a trust controlled by Miriam. Someone had forged her dead husband's signature to steal from his daughter. She called the pension fund immediately. This is Douglas Chin. Mr. Chin, this is Rowan Elridge. I just received your letter about my husband's pension benefits. Ah, Mrs. Elridge, thank you for calling so quickly. I'm afraid we have a serious situation here. How much money are we talking about? The redirected benefits total approximately $47,000. Your husband's original beneficiary form, filed in 2020, split everything 50-50 between you and your daughter June. Rowan sank into a kitchen chair. $47,000. Money that should have gone into June's college fund, stolen by the people who'd just lost visitation rights for child endangerment. Mr. Chin, I need copies of everything. The original beneficiary form, the fraudulent update, any digital records you have. I can email those to you today. Mrs. Elridge, I should tell you that we've already contacted the FBI. Pension fraud is a federal crime. Good. There's something else. The person who submitted the fraudulent change used login credentials that appeared legitimate. Either they had access to your husband's passwords, or they had help from someone who did. After she hung up, Rowan sat in her kitchen, staring at the letter. $47,000. Stolen from a dead man. Stolen from a 9-year-old girl. Her phone rang. Tanner Cobb. Rowan, I just got a very interesting call from a Douglas Chan at the pension fund. Are you sitting down? I already know. They stole from June. It gets worse. I did some digging after Chin called. The Miriam Elridge Family Trust was established in February 2024, 1 month before the fraudulent beneficiary change. Guess who the trustees are? Miriam and Silas. Miriam and Gretchen. Silas isn't listed anywhere, which means he has plausible deniability if this goes to trial. Rowan felt the familiar ice forming in her chest, but this time it was accompanied by something hotter. Rage, pure and simple. They planned this, she said. They knew they were going to steal from June, so they set up the trust first. That's what it looks like. The question is how they got Calder's login information. Rowan closed her eyes, thinking back. Miriam had power of attorney for medical decisions when Calder was in the hospital. She helped him with paperwork, insurance claims. She could have gotten his passwords then. Or Gretchen could have. She was handling his online accounts while he was sick. We need to prove it, and we need to figure out why they waited until March 2024 to make the change. That question answered itself within the hour. Rowan was going through Calder's old files when she found the pension fund's annual statement from 2023. The benefits had increased significantly due to a union settlement. In 2021, when Calder died, his remaining pension was worth about $12,000. By 2024, it had grown to nearly $50,000 the Elridges hadn't just stolen from June. They'd waited for the theft to become more profitable. The FBI agent assigned to the case was a soft-spoken woman named Rebecca Torres, who looked like she could be someone's favorite aunt. She interviewed Rowan in her own kitchen, recording everything on a small digital device. "Walk me through your husband's final months," Torres said. "Who had access to his personal information?" Rowan laid out the timeline methodically. Calder's cancer diagnosis in May 2021, the surgery and chemotherapy that summer, the gradual decline through the fall, his death in August. During his treatment, who helped with financial matters? His sister Gretchen handled most of the online accounts, the insurance claims, prescription orders, that sort of thing. And Miriam had medical power of attorney, so she was involved in all the hospital paperwork. "Did your husband ever give anyone his passwords directly?" "Not that I know of. But Gretchen was always borrowing his laptop to handle insurance stuff. She could have seen him type them in." Torres made notes. "What about after his death? Who had access to his devices?" "I kept his laptop for about 6 months, then gave it to Gretchen. She said she wanted something of his to remember him by." "So Gretchen would have had access to any saved passwords?" "Yes. And she's a trustee of the account that received the stolen money?" "Yes." Torres closed her notebook. "Mrs. Elridge, I want you to know that pension fraud cases usually take time to build. The perpetrators often think they're safe because the victim is dead and can't contradict their story. But you can prove it. We'll try. The digital forensics will help we can trace exactly when and where the fraudulent documents were created. And if Ms. Gretchen still has your husband's laptop, we may be able to recover direct evidence." After Torres left, Rowan called Tanner. "The FBI is investigating, but you said this gets worse. What aren't you telling me?" "I've been doing research on the Elridge family finances. Specifically, I've been looking into why they might have needed $47,000 in March 2024. And Silas was facing a lawsuit. A former business partner accused him of embezzlement. The case was settled out of court in April 2024 for an undisclosed amount." Rowan felt the pieces clicking together. They stole June's money to pay off Silas's legal problems. That's what it looks like. But here's the thing. I don't think you should wait for the federal investigation to play out. "What do you mean?" "I mean we should hit them from multiple directions at once. Criminal charges, civil lawsuit, and public exposure. Make it impossible for them to defend against everything simultaneously." "What would that look like?" "It would look like scorched earth." That night, after June was asleep, Rowan made a phone call she'd been avoiding for 3 years. "Cassidy, it's Rowan." Cassidy Elridge, Calder's younger sister, had been cut off from the family when she came out at 19. She'd moved to Asheville, become a social worker, and built a life as far from her parents as possible while staying in the same state. "Rowan? Holy shit! I haven't heard from you since the funeral. How are you? How's June?" "Not good. I need to tell you what your family has been doing." Rowan laid out everything: the exclusion, the abandonment, the court case, and now the pension fraud. Cassidy listened without interrupting, her breathing growing sharper with each revelation. "They left June alone with Bleach." Cassidy's voice was tight with fury. "That little girl who used to bake cookies with me and ask a million questions about everything. For 6 hours. And they stole her college money. $47,000. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, what do you need from me? Help. Testimony. Someone from the family who'll stand with us instead of against us. You've got it. When do we start? The next morning, Rowan, Tanner, and Cassidy met at a diner outside Greensboro to plan their strategy. Cassidy looked older than her 32 years, with short auburn hair and the kind of lean build that came from hiking mountains every weekend. She wore jeans and a flannel shirt and radiated barely contained anger. "I've been waiting 15 years for a chance to take them down," she said without preamble. "They destroyed my relationship with Calder, made him choose between them and me over and over until he finally stopped calling." "This isn't about revenge," Rowan said carefully. "Isn't it?" Cassidy's eyes were hard. "They've been hurting people for decades. June isn't their first victim, just their most recent. At some point, someone has to make them pay." Tanner spread papers across the table. "Here's what I'm thinking. We file a civil suit for the full amount of the pension plus damages. We demand full financial disclosure, tax returns, bank records, everything. We make this expensive and public." "What about criminal charges?" "The FBI will handle that. But civil court has a lower burden of proof. We might win money damages, even if they don't go to jail." Cassidy leaned forward. "What about the media? The story that went viral was just the beginning. If people knew they'd stolen from a dead man—" "Careful," Tanner warned. "We don't want to compromise the criminal case." "Then we're strategic about it. We don't make accusations we can't prove. We just make sure people know what they're accused of." By the end of the meeting, they had a plan. Tanner would file the civil suit within the week. Cassidy would provide testimony about the family's history of exclusion and control. And Rowan would document everything, creating a paper trail that would make it impossible for the Elridges to claim this was all a misunderstanding. "There's one more thing," Cassidy said as they prepared to leave. "Gretchen." "What about her?" "She's the weak link. Mom and Dad are old school, they'll never admit wrongdoing. But Gretchen? She's always been afraid of consequences. If the FBI shows up at her door with a warrant, she'll crack." "How do you know?" Cassidy smiled grimly. "Because I know what she did when she was 16 and thought she was going to get caught shoplifting. She confessed to everything before security even found the merchandise." "What did she steal?" "A candy bar. Cost maybe $2. Cassidy stood up, dropping money on the table. "Some people can't handle the pressure of real consequences. Gretchen's one of them." The civil lawsuit hit like a thunderbolt. Tanner filed it on a Tuesday morning, demanding not just the return of the stolen pension money, but punitive damages, attorney fees, and a full accounting of the Elridge family finances going back 5 years. By Tuesday afternoon, it was all over social media. Breaking: family who abandoned 9-year-old with bleach, now accused of stealing dead son's pension money. The story had everything: elderly criminals, a victimized child, stolen money, and federal investigators. Local news picked it up first, then regional outlets, then national parenting blogs and true crime forums. Rowan's phone started ringing immediately. Reporters, mostly, but also people from the community offering support. Other families who'd been hurt by the Elridges over the years, now emboldened to share their stories. "Mrs. Elridge, this is Sandy Mitchell. My daughter was in class with Kenzie Elridge last year. I just wanted you to know that Mr. Silas tried to get our son kicked off the soccer team because his uniform was dirty. Mrs. Elridge, this is Tom Brady from Channel 8. Would you be willing to go on camera about the pension fraud? Rowan, it's Janet from June's school. I probably shouldn't be calling, but I wanted you to know that we're all rooting for you." Rowan declined the interview requests, but documented every call of support. By Thursday, she had a list of 43 people who'd volunteered to testify about the Elridges' pattern of discriminatory behavior. The FBI moved faster than anyone expected. On Friday morning, Agent Torres called with an update. We executed search warrants yesterday on both Gretchen Elridge's home and the law office that handled the trust documents. We recovered your husband's laptop and several other pieces of evidence. What did you find? I can't go into details, but I can tell you that we've made an arrest. Who? Gretchen Elridge. She was taken into custody this morning and charged with wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit pension fraud. Rowan sank into a chair. What about Miriam? Still under investigation. Ms. Gretchen is cooperating with our inquiry. Cassidy had been right. Faced with real consequences, Gretchen had folded immediately. The arrest made the evening news, complete with footage of Gretchen being led away in handcuffs. She looked smaller than Rowan remembered, older and more fragile. Nothing like the sharp-tongued woman who defended her parents' treatment of June. Sunday brought another surprise. A call from Preston Matthews, the Elridge's attorney. Mrs. Elridge, my clients would like to discuss a settlement. Your clients are facing federal charges. What kind of settlement? Full restitution of the pension money, plus interest, a formal apology, and a guarantee of no further contact with your family in exchange for your agreement not to pursue punitive damages in the civil case. Rowan almost laughed. Mr. Matthews, your clients stole $47,000 from a 9-year-old girl. They abandoned her with industrial chemicals. They spent 3 years making her feel unwanted and unloved. And you think an apology makes that right? Mrs. Elridge, please consider. No, we'll see them in court. She hung up and called Tanner immediately. They want to settle, she told him. For how much? Just the pension money, plus interest. And an apology. Tanner was quiet for a moment. That's not a serious offer. I know. What do you want to do? I want to destroy them. The civil trial was scheduled for December, but it never made it that far. In November, 3 months after Gretchen's arrest, Miriam Elridge was indicted on federal fraud charges. The evidence was overwhelming. Digital forensics had traced the fraudulent documents to her home computer, and Gretchen's cooperation had filled in the remaining gaps. Faced with the possibility of federal prison time, Miriam took a plea deal. Full restitution, 2 years probation, and a felony conviction that would appear on every background check for the rest of her life. Silas was never charged criminally, but the civil case proceeded against him as a beneficiary of the stolen money. In January, he agreed to pay an additional $20,000 in punitive damages rather than face a public trial. By February, it was over. June's college fund had been restored with interest and damages. The Elridge's reputation in Greensboro was destroyed beyond repair. Silas resigned from the Veterans Board in disgrace. Miriam lost her volunteer position at the church. Gretchen lost her teaching job when the school board voted not to renew her contract. The family that had spent decades controlling their community through wealth and influence found themselves outcasts in the town they'd once dominated. Rowan used part of the settlement money to buy a house in the mountains near Asheville, 40 minutes from Cassidy's apartment. It was a modest place with a big yard and views of the Blue Ridge Mountains, far enough from Greensboro to feel like a fresh start. June loved it immediately, especially the guest house where Cassidy moved in to help with the transition. Having an aunt who actually wanted her around was a revelation for the 9-year-old, who blossomed under Cassidy's easy affection and sarcastic humor. Aunt Cassidy, can we hike to the waterfall again? June asked over breakfast one Saturday morning in March. After you finish your math homework, Cassidy replied, stealing a piece of June's bacon. Education first, then adventure. That's what Mom always says. Your mom is smart. That's why I like her. Rowan watched the exchange with quiet satisfaction. This was what family was supposed to look like: adults who protected children, who chose to love them unconditionally, who made them feel wanted and valued. The Elridges had lost more than money in their war against June. They'd lost the chance to be part of something beautiful, something real. They'd chosen blood over love, control over connection, and in the end, They'd lost everything that mattered. Rowan didn't gloat about their downfall. She didn't forgive them for what they'd done. She simply moved forward, building a life where June would never again have to earn her place in a family that should have loved her from the beginning. But she won, and sometimes winning was enough.